So in the first half of this session today, we'd like to dispel some of those myths that you might have and inform you about the roles that you can play as an NCF member, as a fund advisory committee member, and help you find some of the resources that we have available for our FAC members to help you with that role. We hope that you'll take away some practical insights as well as some philosophical ones. The second half of this session will be more about how to become a collective group on a fund advisory committee. And so we'll work through some of that information. Please know that this space is open for all kinds of questions. There are no silly or stupid questions today. This is a space where if you have a question that maybe is a question that's been on your mind for quite some time, and you may have been on the FAC for 4 or 5 years, and you still have a question about that. This is a space to ask that question and help us as coordinators know what we need to be offering more information for you on. So please know, any question you have, this is the day to put it out there and we'll hopefully get it answered. So to get started, we're going to break you out into breakout rooms. We'd like for you to share your name, what fund you're with, and how long you've been on the FAC. And then what part of being an FAC member is just kind of a mystery to you. So we'll break out and have a little bit of conversation and meet some of our individuals across the state, and then we'll come back together. So here we go. Okay, from here, we're going to have Steve Brewster talk a little bit about some top 10 things to know about the Nebraska Community Foundation Network. But again, please continue to put chats or questions in the chat box, and we will try to address those by the end of the session. So I'm going to pass it off to Steve so we can keep moving along here.
Thank you, Jana, and hello, everyone. My name is Steve Brewster. I'm on the staff. I'm an affiliated fund development coordinator. I started in that position in January of 2019, so not quite 2 years. And before that, I spent about 3 years on the NCF board. And before that, and during that time, I was also on the Stewart Community Foundation Fund Advisory Committee and chaired it for about a year, I think, before I came to the NCF staff. So that's my, I guess, context, my experience. And part of the reason for wanting to do this was that it seemed like there were a lot of things that I wish I had known sooner when I joined the network. Like one of the things I didn't learn, and maybe this is because I didn't listen, I'm sure I was told this, but from being on the FAC and then on the board, it was about a year before I learned that the primary role of an FAC is to grow the unrestricted endowment. And I thought, wow, I didn't know that. That probably would have been a good thing to know sooner. And so then I started thinking about other things. What would I want to know, or what would be good things to know that not necessarily everyone else knows right out of the gate. So we came up with this concept of the top 10, and it was actually quite fun. The entire staff got involved. Everybody had their ideas about the top 10, but they all had them. And even the people in accounting and compliance, all that, I mean, this became a very much talked about document. So we had a lot of fun with it. It's still evolving. There's still some suggested changes and improvements that staff have made that haven't been incorporated. So keep your eyes open for continuing improvements. And if you have some that say, hey, why isn't this on there? Send them in. We're all NCF. We'll take everybody's ideas. And so that's the context. And then I have a kind of a confession. This first slide, if you want to go to that, Dina, is relates to rule number 1. And it's not so much a rule or this is going to get you somewhere, but I think nobody on staff thought it should be dethroned from number one. So I think it's more of a pet peeve sometimes. But this is the cover of a book called Eats, Shoots, and Leaves. And it's a book about basically punctuation matters. And these pandas are, of course, trying to take out the comma because they eat shoots and leaves as opposed to, the alternative of. So next slide, please. The first rule really is words matter. And so when you're new, you'll hear we hear board members and FAC members and people who've been around a long time refer to themselves as a foundation. It's just short for foundation fund, but they stop with the foundation. So you're a member of a committee and not a member of a board. So that's, this isn't going to save the world, but it will matter later on, and it'll be reinforced with some of these ones that come later. So the next thing is that you're a fund and not a foundation. And I know there's been a certain amount of prestige in being able to call yourself a foundation fund rather than just a community fund. But I think what happens is a lot of people drop the fund and then they refer to, our foundation. Well, it's Nebraska's got the foundation. The third one, thank you, is you're an affiliated fund of the community foundation, of the Nebraska Community Foundation. So that's enough for that. That's a staff, number one is that words matter. Please refer to yourself as a committee member. And then we'll go to rule number 2. And these aren't necessarily going to match your slides. This is kind of Steve's Cliff's Notes version, my own particular spin. Please talk to your coordinators about what their top 10 are. But as I mentioned earlier, growing your community's unrestricted endowment is the primary role of the FAC, and I think that just shapes a lot of your agendas and your focus and what you're spending your time on. Certainly, there's other things, and if you want to go to the next slide, developing strong donor relationships is a big piece of that. It's independent from that because it's also involved in making impactful grants. But those are the things that really matter. So the next one is that your development coordinator is your personal trainer. NCF is your gym. If you want to get better, stronger, faster, whatever it is you're trying to do, you join a gym, and then you get a personal trainer. If you don't rely on your personal trainer, you don't rely on the gym, you're not going to get better as fast. So get to know what's available. What I've seen on the board and being just around the network for a long time is the towns, the communities that make the most progress lean on NCF the hardest. Thank you, Dina. Here's know all the resources. Certainly you want to know what trainings are available for your NCF, and your coordinator has all that, whether it's action planning update, impact planning, plan giving, campaign design, make and ask. All those things are great resources, but there's other resources that you can get on your own without that. The NCF website is one of those. If you go to the resources tab, and then to the peer learning library, and then finally the NCF classroom, there's, half a dozen pages of content, whether it's articles or videos or things like that. So get to know the website, it's a great resource. Thanks, Dina. Make decisions by consensus. This is kind of the secret sauce of, in my opinion, is some of the key ingredients to the recipe. But consensus is basically a decision that everyone can live with. and that everyone can commit to. And the reason why you want to use consensus rather than voting is because when you vote, election week, somebody loses and there can be resentment, things like that. In my opinion, I know others have other opinions, but you can talk to your coordinator. It seems like committees like your FAC and especially subcommittees don't ever need to vote. There's no reason you can't ever get to consensus, it would seem to me. And the secret sauce, one of them is that FACs, committees, subcommittees is how you get your work done. So those are, I think that's all I have on that one. Learn to collaborate. You need to collaborate because a lot of what you want to do to make an impact, you can't do with one person or even one organization. You need to collaborate with other individuals. You need to collaborate with other organizations. You need to leverage other resources. Donors like it when you collaborate. You get more done, it's more fun, it's more impactful, and it takes a longer time. So I'll just leave it at that, but the big impact happens. This one is, obviously it's part of donor development. It's much easier to visit a donor and ask them if they would like to contribute to what you're doing, if you've contributed. I know a lot of people make monthly donations, which is great. We appreciate that. But other FAC members don't give at all. And so if nothing else, make an annual gift, just a gesture of, yes, I'm invested in my fund. I'm invested in what we're doing. And so it's just create that culture of generosity. Thank you. And then leads us to the next one, which is think before you bank. I learned that at the Kansas conference a few years ago. I really like that idea. And just to give you an example for this week, we had a plan in place to thank our peer mentors and people who are helping us facilitate. We had thank you cards and we had a list prepared before the conference even started. So you want to have your thank you machine in place before you start asking for gifts. And the last one is again related really to donor development and growing your unrestricted endowment. And if you don't have grant policy and grant guidelines, I encourage you to develop them. It's a great way when you visit a donor, when they say, because they're not all used to giving to an unrestricted endowment, what are you going to use the money for? You can say, well, we don't know. We want to get as much community involvement as we can, but here is our grant policies and guidelines so that we know I know that when I'm off the committee, this is how decisions will be made. And donors like to know that you have a framework for deciding and that you're not just going to be throwing money around willy-nilly. And I think that's all for my presentation. Again, type questions in to the chat box. We'll try and get to them later. But now I think Emily is going to lead us into a breakout. Is that right?
Yes. So, sorry, let me find my question. I was getting ahead of myself. So hopefully you all knew all of that and there were no surprises. But what we'd really like you to do is dive into a breakout room, discuss whether any of those were surprises, or if you had any other questions, and we'd love to see you learn from each other. So if someone has a question, maybe the others in the group can answer the question. All right, take us away, Dina.
Well, good. Well, thank you for spending that time. Let's see, Jeff is saying, I suggest FAC consider how you can ask experienced effort to move over. Yes, this is what Jeff has written in the chat here is something that I'm hearing a lot already today, which is this leadership succession and how we kind of pass that torch. So that is an incredibly important thing. And moving in to kind of our next section here, this graphic that you see on the screen is, we were all, speaking of surprises, all surprised by a pandemic earlier this year in March. And, thankfully, this network is an impressive group of people who are committed and care deeply about their neighbors and about their community. And
So immediately, as you would expect, the affiliated funds all across the state were rising to the occasion right away. And so what we witnessed as staff was FACs playing this really important role in their community to help people get through this hard time. And so we decided it would be helpful to kind of define those roles. And what we observed was that FACs were conveners and connectors, were leaders, were grant makers, were fundraisers, were cheerleaders and champions, and an information and resource hub. And as the pandemic has worn on, and the more we've kind of looked at this graphic and discussed these roles, we realized that these are not just the role that the FAC plays during times of crisis or during times of pandemic, but also these are kind of applicable year-round. These are important roles that every FAC can play in good times and in bad. So we thought it would be helpful today in an NCF 101 to kind of dive a little bit deeper into those roles. And what we have done is invited a few volunteers from FACs around the state to help us tell some community stories that kind of highlight how different communities are playing this role in theirs. So I would like to introduce some friends of ours. So first of all, joining us today will be Joe Kandler from Shickley, and Al Stoiter from Brown County, Rita Luongo from Hebron, Angie Colste from Keith County, Mark Lawrenson from Pender, and Kurt Cruz from Boone County, Boone County. So welcome to our panel. It's great to see you all, and we are very thankful to have you sharing some of your wisdom with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and dive right in. First, I'd like to say we are going to leave a lot of time for questions at the end. So please make good use of that chat box as you have been doing. But also, just keep your questions in mind because we're going to spend quite a bit of time at the end asking this panel some questions. So first of all, okay, first up, we have Joe Kandler is joining us today from Shickley. Hi, Joe. Hi, Joe. And Shickley is a town of a little over 300 people. And it bills itself a big little town, and for a lot of good reasons. In Shickley, they invest time and money in their parks, their playgrounds, their swimming pool, sports team, and library. They completed construction of a new $1 million community center a few years ago, which you should go see, it's beautiful. Has a fully equipped wellness center. And few communities the size of Shickley could match its early childhood development and preschool programs administered through their local school district. And we do know for a fact that families have relocated to Shickley specifically because of that. One of the most astonishing things about Shickley, in my opinion, is this. You've heard us talk a lot about the transfer of wealth and that there is $600 billion transferring from one generation to the next by the year 2060. And you've also heard us talk a lot in the NCF network about the desire, the need, what we're working toward is capturing at least 5% of that transfer of wealth for the benefit of our communities in perpetuity in the form of unrestricted endowments. Shickley has total endowed assets of over $4 million, which is an incredible 624% of their 10-year transfer of wealth countywide. And I believe that is one of, if not the largest percentage that's been captured in the entire network to date. So what I guess I'm getting at with that is that Shickley knows how to raise money. And one of the volunteers who's been heavily involved in fundraising efforts over many years is Joe. So Joe, why don't you share a few reflections on what you've learned about this very important function of fundraising for your affiliated fund there in Shickley?
Well, thank you again. My name's Joe Kandler. Thanks for that terrific introduction and favorable words about the Shickley community. And everything that I'm going to talk about today has led to those planned gifts. And the strategy, kind of an indirect strategy of our fundraising, immediate fundraising goals has always been to plant seeds to ask for planned gifts. So the strategies and the things I talk about today have successfully led to those planned gifts. So anyway, limited amount of time here, so I will move on. A lot of things I'm going to talk about today, I have learned from attending NCF workshops. And so some of you will probably hear some things that you've heard before, and I'm copying them. but they have stuck with me and they've been vital to our success. The first thing is, fundraising is a marathon. It's not a sprint. People need to gear up for a long journey when they get into fundraising. And I think that's why our term limits are 9 years. It's because once you get going, it takes a few years to get going. And once you get going, it takes time to see results. And the same people can be involved for a long period of time to get those results. The larger the goal or the project, the more time it's going to take. And you'll hear me talk about this throughout this presentation, is that we, for the most part in our communities, we're volunteers and we're trying to balance family, job, other charitable works that we're involved in, and yet try to raise money for community projects that you feel strongly about. That's the rub in this, is that fundraising takes a lot of time and you've got to slice out pieces of your life to get this done. From our fundraising experience, here are some key traits that I think make fundraising go faster and more successful. Number one, try to find projects that are something that's community driven, like from a town hall meeting, perhaps a community strategic planning meeting, an FAC civic or community group that targets certain projects. If something is kind of unanimously thought of, it's easier to raise money for than if it's a small percentage of people driving it. Another thing is after a project is identified, find some core donors, and especially FAC members, to ante up. It is so powerful when you go to meet with donors to say, hey, look at this list of people who've already stepped up and are behind this. And what we found with our FAC, we have 12 members, and we have moms, we have young moms, we have older people, we have seniors, established, retired people, a good mix. And when you put a piece of paper that shows those people's names and they've given, don't have to show amounts, but just say they've contributed, is very powerful and influential. We have used mailers and brochures in our fundraising efforts, and that is done, and I think it has been successful for us. Not that you're going to get money back with those mailers, but in small communities, it is essential to get accurate information out at the same time. And we also include maybe FAQ items, the most common questions that people are going to have after they look through the brochure, because that will stop any negative talk. It'll just kibosh it. And when people get the same information at the same time, we have really liked that in a small community, because everybody talks and it's really easy to to be a downer on new stuff, but you can spin it. It's your stage to put things in a positive light. And again, it does change people's attitudes. That FAQ answers probably 90% of the questions, and also that restrains people from spreading gossip because the answers are there. So we really like that. The other function of the mailer or the brochure is it softens people up, and it starts making them think for when you do make a call to see about asking money from that donor. It softens them up and hopefully puts them in a positive light. So we have been the most successful with fundraising by making personal visits. And again, the rub is that takes time, and you have to somehow carve it out and just get it done. And, you know, if you can ideally come up with a team of 6 to 8 people and spread the load, it goes a lot better. It goes faster, and not everybody feels as burdened. Um, you know, having a script, talking through the brochure, whatever, that's been helpful for us. Um, go in with a positive attitude. Expect a yes when you ask that question. It's not about how much. It's just about, you know, how do you feel about this project? Wouldn't it be great to have this project? Think of our town in 10 years after this project. Put people in a positive light, and don't worry about the amount, but really be positive going into it. Expect a yes. Be confident in your script and your delivery. One of the things I fall back on is an analogy that, you know, successful, highly paid Major League Baseball players hit the ball in fair play about 30% of the time. Them guys are the best. So I've actually got a much better percentage than that raising money than 30%, but I don't get paid like a ball player does. But anyway, that makes me feel pretty good when I can do better than some highly paid people that fail a lot. Some techniques, you know, I found to be successful is making sure you put the donor in a positive mood. You maybe you do your homework before you meet the donor, and you say, hey, I remember when you helped the fire department with a donation, you know, that was made public and everybody knew about it, or we had a list of donors to the school booster club and you've helped on that. I saw your name. You make them feel like it's their habit to give, and you more or less trick them, I guess. But anyway, if you've got that information, it's helpful. It puts people like in a mood of, well, I should help on this. Let's see, another technique that I learned probably from an FAC workshop 15 years ago is that normally, I mean, not asking people for money, but normally when you ask a person to help you, if you got trouble on the road, or you're having trouble with holding all your bags when you're shopping, and you ask somebody to help you, their most common response is, well, yeah, I can help. So we need to try to incorporate that when we ask people for money. We talk about a project, and we talk about how good it would be for the community. And then at some point, if you can just say, you know, can you help on this? Most people are inclined to say yes, because you're kind of a nerd if you say no. So we've used that in a lot of our one-on-ones with people, and it seems to win them over. And then finally, one of the things that is indirectly fundraising is, whenever it can be done, recognize your donors, inform your donors. Something that we always do is we kind of have 2 big community events a year. One is a Chamber of Commerce meal that's for the whole community to come to. And FAC members are there, fund members are there with donor stickers that says, I donated to the Shickley Endowment Fund. And we put them stickers on the donors. And we're lucky in a small community, we know who they are. And so we're very fortunate that way. So all these people walk around and they don't peel their stickers off. They like them. Mm-hmm. And so we do it there. And we also do it at our annual donor meeting. However, we're not having that this year, but we do it there as well. Inform your donors. We have a little community newsletter that goes out twice a month. And when we make our grants, we put the list of grants in there that we make. And then in the fall now, here between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we put out a holiday letter. and it goes to our donor base, and it lets them know the yearly highlights of the foundation, a little bit of the financial information, and at the very end, an ask for your continued support. We get $500 a year by sending that thing out. Just random people, not the same ones every year, but they like what they read, and they just send us a little check here and there. So that, I call them touches. I think we have 4 to 5 touches a year with our donors, and I think that keeps them on board for future projects that we may have coming, so we can go to them and ask again. That's all I have.
That is so wonderful. That is so much goodness. Thank you, Joe, for sharing lots and lots of powerful insights there into your success as fundraisers in Shickley. And we'll, like I said, keep your questions in mind. We'll come back around for questions for Joe here after a bit, but we're going to move on to Al Stoiter in Johnstown, who is a longtime FAC member, now emeritus actually, for the fund in Brown County. And Al also serves on and is the immediate past chair for NCF's statewide board of directors. Al is a longtime leader in the NCF network. Leadership could be defined as a process of social influence which maximizes the efforts of others toward the achievement of a greater good. And effective leaders inspire the people around them, who then become motivated to work harder and make more significant contributions to the betterment of the community. But leadership doesn't just happen. In order to be effective, it should be intentional, and it's important to observe and learn from our experience as leaders. So Al, as an established leader in the NCF network and having been around for a long time, and especially in your community, what reflections about the important function of leadership within an FAC and within a community can you share with our group today?
Well, thank you, Janie, for that opportunity. And thank you, Joe, for making it pretty easy. I was gonna say something a little different, but your community-driven success with your fundraising is critical, and the leadership of an individual committee, I would describe as the leadership role is to be the keeper of the community vision and priorities as they change. This is a forever business we're in communities with unrestricted endowments and grant making and doing that enhanced thing for the community enhancement. It's a forever thing. We don't live forever. We need to replace ourselves with people who have the same commitment we have to their community. And I think we all know instinctively in small communities that the human resource is the most critical. I mean, money is held by individual people. And so community funded leadership it's an evolutionary thing. And we need to be intentional, like was said, and we need to be inclusive. If we're gonna gain community support for projects and work under a consensus mode, which if you can't get it by consensus, you probably shouldn't be doing it, at least now. It means you have some work to do. So, I mean, all those things, it's kind of, this is general. There are a lot of details about it, but I consider Jim Gustafson, the 5 I's that we hear about in fundraising, and Joe obviously knows them, are the same when you're looking for leadership. And we make it the responsibility of every current member to be the lead in replacing themselves. And of course, new people have to be accepted under consensus of the current committee, but you identify people who you think might be good leaders for the community and have a strong talent that you need. You inform them of all that. This is, like Joe said, this is serious work. It takes time. You don't want to have somebody just say, yeah, sure, I'll do that after you ask them the first time. I mean, that's probably a no-go for me. Once you tell them what the commitment you want out of them, and you still think they would be good, you invite them to be on the committee. And by that time, you vetted them, with the committee. And then, like Jim says, the last I is, I thank you for taking my job, because I'm going to move on to do something else, but I'll help you whenever you need me. So that's
Awesome.
what
That's awesome. Oh, sorry, Al, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Thank you for sharing. And I just because I know leadership succession is such a big thing. So many, I mean, even at the beginning of this session, several of you brought it up. So be sure to tune in tomorrow. I keep plugging tomorrow's noon session, but we'll talk even deeper dive, and Al will be on that one too, to talk even more about leadership succession, because it really is important in this work that we do. Okay, so I'm moving to Rita. Hi, Rita Luongo is joining us today from Hebron, which is in Thayer County. And Thayer County has 5 community-based affiliated funds in the NCF network. Thayer County is home to many small businesses and manufacturing plants. It has several very high-quality school systems and outstanding healthcare and medical care. And when we talk about the role of convening and connecting, we have some really great examples coming out of Thayer County recently, especially as it relates to recent efforts around to connect various groups around the Bridging the Learning Gap grant opportunities that have been offered through NCF. So Rita, I'm going to turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about how your fund in the FAC has served a very important role of convening and connecting various groups to leverage resources and meet a need in your community. Take it away, Rita.
Okay, so like she said, my name is Rita Luongo, and I would like to first say that I am very fortunate to be the chair of the Hebron Community Fund. And I also work as the development director at Thayer County Health Services, which is our county hospital and clinics. And this, my job gives me the, I guess, I get to work with a lot of the different communities, because I would say that the success of the hospital is a direct reflection of these different communities working together on projects and stuff that help improve local health care. So anyone who knows me knows that I have these big dreams of how all the nonprofits and all the funds within Thayer County can work closer together, because really we all have common goals. And I think that working together, we can achieve those. I see some of this becoming a reality, as like we have the community of Deschler and Hebron funds that are working on bringing the Dream Switch to Thayer County. And they're not just involving their 2 towns, they're involving others within the county, as well as not just one school, but all the schools in the county. And then, like Janie said, the most recent success story was when the Hebron Community Fund partnered with the hospital fund for the Bridging the Learning Gap grant. When it was expanded this year and included behavioral health programs, we saw this as an opportunity that we both did our own application for the grant, and we're very excited when we were both funded. So working together, these 2 funds were able to have a bigger impact on the implementation of the hospital's new behavioral health program. And, this program was important before, but because of the recent pandemic and all this, it's just brought even more behavioral health and mental health issues to light. And this program will not only benefit the students of the 3 public schools here in the county, as well as the 1 parochial elementary school, but it's going to be a great resource for parents and for the educators involved with these schools. And I see these partnerships, and I think the other funds do too now. You know, we're starting, as we work more and more together, as an investment in Thayer County and its future. And it's just a way that when we work together that we can dream bigger, we can accomplish more. And, you know, my next thing is they know that I really want to get a big give day going, or a big give week, or a big give month, however we put it together, for the funds to work together and do one countywide. And you know, I really feel that in Thayer County, the sky's the limit. You know, we're only limited by what we can visualize. And I guess that's why I always tell people, when if you get like mailings from me, the quote that I always like comes from Helen Keller, and it's on a lot of my stuff. And it's, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So
that's awesome. That's a perfect way to wrap that up. Thank you, Rita, for sharing. And yeah, lots of good stuff going on in Thayer County. That's for sure. So thanks. And we're going to move on to Angie Colste, who's joining us today from Ogallala in Keith County, who you may have heard a little bit about in the last year or so. And I'm not going to steal Angie's thunder, but I'm sure she'll tell you something pretty exciting. But that exciting thing that happened, when it happened, the Keith County Fund knew that they really needed to know their community in their county before they could make impactful grants. So I'd like to invite Angie, who is the vice chair of the Keith County Fund, to share a little bit with us about how their fund has been serving at this important role of information and resource hub for Keith County.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Angie Colste of the FAC of the Keith County Community Foundation. We were so thrilled to receive our enormous anonymous gift, but we did realize immediately we wanted guidance to assist us in making more effective and impactful grants. So our FAC knew we needed to completely understand Keith County, and with the help of NCF, we dug deep into information about Keith County. Jana, would you show us oh, thank you. Thank you, Dina. So with the help of NCF, we created a Keith County community snapshot. And I'd like to go through and point out just a few of the items that stood out on each page to me. So on the first one, our community members. It tells us who lives in our county and what makes up household, what demographics are migrating in and out, and how many seniors live here. 67% of household income is over $50,000, and 36% of people living here are previously from the area, or newcomers are from the area. We were also pleased to see a 19.7 increase in 30 to 34-year-olds making their home in Keith County. We're also happy to have a 12.1% migration into Keith County in the 60 to 64-year-old bracket. A surprising statistic to me, can we move on down a little bit, that 39.4% of children live in a single parent household in Keith County. That's the 4th highest statewide. So if we could move on to the next page, our economy. So this page gives us information about our primary traditional economic activities, and it's really not a huge surprise that they are agriculture, regional trade, including health and wellness, recreational tourism with Lake McConaughey, and transportation corridor services with our location on I-80. One thing that really surprised me was the single largest generator of household income in Keith County is the annual income of retirees living here at $135 million. Also shocking to me is that 45% of our county income is from non-earned sources, and that would include Medicare, Medicaid, retirement income, and passive income like rent. It was also suggested after the survey that an entrepreneurial culture if we would foster that, it would contribute to a more active environment for retiree and remote worker attraction. So as we, if you could go back to the education. One more, there we go. As we explore education, we see Ogallala and Paxton have a high graduation rate, both ranking 88% statewide. However, we are a bit above average in the statewide communities in the number of students requiring free and reduced lunches. Our 11th grade students tested a bit below average in English, language arts, math, and science. I did find it interesting that the post-secondary enrollment rate for our communities are above the state average. I would be interested to see the percentage of students completing a post-secondary course. And I would also like to love to stress the importance of trade schools for all interested students. As we said in the first session, we must encourage our young people to spread their wings and learn a trade or vocation while stressing the point that we want them to return and be a vital part of our community. So as we move to the bottom of this page, we see statistics regarding early childhood development. Keith County has 422 children under the age of 5 residing here. The alarming statistic to me is there are only 239 openings with a licensed child care provider. What is happening to the remaining 183 children? Some are able to rely on family and friends, but my hope is for affordable, quality, early childhood development for all these little people. And on the right, on the last page, our housing is addressed. We learned in our community member segment on the first page that Keith County will have 1,000 more seniors in 2030 than we did in 2010. We also learned from the study there are only 34 beds available for assisted living and 82 beds for long-term care. With those numbers, it's not a surprise that we have a negative 17.1% migration of citizens 70 years and above. 1/3 of our housing stock is now owned by older people, and it is expected that 80% of housing will turn over in the next 20 years. So in closing, I'd just like to say we are so grateful to NCF for their assistance in gathering this important information, allowing us to see our strengths and weaknesses. Using this data has led to 3 excellent visioning sessions with people from all segments of Keith County. A collaborative effort has helped us identify 3 main focus areas for the county to work on together: early childhood development, housing, and first impressions or curb appeal. I firmly believe our FAC, with the enlightening information from our community snapshot, is serving an important role of information and resources for Keith County. Thank you. I'm complete.
Thank you so much, Angie. We really appreciate that. And that is, if you didn't see in the chat, she was talking about a $7 million gift from an anonymous donor to their unrestricted endowment. So important to gather that information to help inform what you do with all that payout. So very good. So moving to Pender now, we're going to Mark Lawrenson, who's joining us today from Pender. It's a community of around 1,100 people. And I imagine that you may have heard of their community center also. We were there a couple of years ago, I guess, for the CYN Summit in tandem when we were in Norfolk for our annual event. That community center features an event center, meeting spaces, basketball courts, a walking track, batting cages. It also houses the village offices, veterans organization, and a 24-hour fitness center. And importantly, as we just heard from Angie and others, an early childhood development facility, which is owned and operated by the local hospital. This facility in Pender cost $7.1 million, and the vast majority of that was funded through contributions from local donors. Pender was also successful in raising $500,000, wrapped that campaign up last year for their unrestricted endowment, which was matched with $250,000 through NCF's partnership with the Sherwood Foundation during the Building Community Capacity Initiative. And when you're going to do all those big things in a community, I know Mark will talks a little bit about there's always going to be cave people, which in the NCF network is citizens against virtually everything. And so when you're facing cave people, and they exist in every community, you definitely need to have cheerleaders and champions, people who see the glass as half full rather than half empty. If your fund wants to dream big dreams to make things happen, you have to see yourselves as those cheerleaders. So they do a lot of cheerleading in Pender. So we're going to turn to Mark. And Mark, I want to ask you first, how did you get started in Pender? There you go.
Well, it's FAC 101, and cheerleading is how we got started. We were fortunate that they sent us a great cheerleader, Doug Freely, and he came to Pender and whipped us into a frenzy. We were perfectly willing to be whipped into a frenzy, so it was pretty easy work for him. He brought a lot of enthusiasm to Pender. Enthusiasm is another word for passion, eagerness, warmth, fervor, zeal, devotion, and we had a lot of passion, so it was great work. And Doug promoted training, that was all part of the cheerleading. And we had great leaders to begin with. Ray Welsh, he was always a cheerleader. Some of you probably don't know, he was a sports cheerleader at Hastings College, so he was good at it. He was a pro. And we have a new cheerleader. We have a person we hired staff, Channing Rhea. She is doing a great job of keeping us on task and keeping us positive and moving along. Yeah, you can't focus on the negative people. You have to work with the willing, and we've done a good job of that. I think that one of the best cheerleading tools in the toolbox is going to the annual meeting, and there's great training there. We've always gone out and fundraised and brought a lot of people. We get a lot of tables, invite everybody that was interested in our foundation fund, and we'd bring 20 or 30 people or 40 people to the banquet, and they figure out in a hurry that we have some credibility when they listen to what goes on. And when they talk about your town and you bring all your people along to the banquet and they're pointing out what a great job you've done, it's perfect. It's like I said, the best tool in the toolbox for me. We love bringing people to it, and you get to connect with the other funds, and they realize that other communities are looking up to you, and it really makes you proud.
Yes. Thank you. And you have a lot to be proud of. And anybody who has been to Pender or spent any time with the folks from Pender know that they are cheerleaders and champions of fun. A lot of fun there too. So thank you, Mark. I don't want to cut you off if you had some other thoughts to share, but I know we are kind of getting low on time here too. So I was going to.
I'm complete.
Thank you, Mark. Very nice to hear from you. Okay, so last but not least, and that was a nice jab at Ray. I'm sure, I don't know if Ray's on, but I'm sure Ray Kurt Cruz, hi Kurt, is joining us today from Albion, which is in Boone County. And there are many great communities in the NCF network who are making impactful grants for the benefit of their community. And in some places that means investments in early childhood development or after school programs or big trail projects or a swimming pool or splash pads or community centers. In Boone County is pretty much all of the above. We've been watching the Boone County Fund make impactful grants in their community for a very long time, and it shows when you visit. And today we'd like to invite Kurt to talk a little bit, to share a little about how they make their grants and what kinds of grants and investments they've made that have catalyzed other investments and what they've learned is helpful in order to make grants that create positive change in the community. So Kurt, I'm going to turn it over to you for a few minutes here.
Thanks, Jenny. First, I'd like to extend to Joe. Next time he gets termed out at Shickley, we've got a spot for him up here. Our climate in Boone County is a lot better than Shickley, so Joe can move anytime. Grants in Boone County started out just maintenance grants, 10 or 12 different organizations, 500 here and 1,000 there. We still do that. 7 years ago, we started our Big Give project, start that, a few of us felt we needed a coordinator, somebody to keep us organized, keep us on point. So we hired a coordinator. So we used grant dollars for that. And we thought it was successful. She did a great job, still doing it. So after that, we've, two other main projects are After Kids School project and our Boom Begins, our early childhood project. Both of them, we've hired ladies that were teachers, had kids at home, so they weren't teaching. And we've had them research, go to conferences, kind of be our lead dog in each project, find out what we needed, go to different people, whether it be the school or groups for the early childhood. So we use some of our grant dollars to kind of be their lead on some of these important projects that we think are important. And then we use our dollars to help pay for the project every year. And then like both of them, the after school, we go together with Albion Education and help cover the scholarship kids or the kids that can't afford it. And both of the programs need the kids that benefit can't always afford it, so we try to cover that. And I guess one, we always try to leave some dollars left over. And this year with the learning gap, they came into play. We had quite a little dollars that hadn't rolled over yet, so we did. We $1 left that we combined with NCF and other organizations, and we size the amount that we applied for learning 1 and 2. And you know, last summer we probably thought the wouldn't be going on, but now we know that schools are still impacted by the COVID and all this going on. So I guess the main emphasis is just that we're using some dollars to help lead these projects rather than money for a project.
Awesome. Thank you, Kurt. Thank you, everyone. Let's see, a round of applause for our panel here so far. Thank you for sharing. So I'm going to turn over to Emily because I haven't seen a whole lot of what's going on in the chat, but I think at this point we'd love to invite questions. I know we're kind of running low on time, but I'd sure love to hear questions for this panel from participants. So
yeah, we've got about 7 minutes for questions, and to our several participants on this Zoom call today, this is your moment to ask them. So please drop them in the chat box or even unmute and let us know what you think. You can also raise your hand if you can figure it out. Click participants, and then a button should pop up to raise your hand. So you can let me know that way that you have a question.
Emily, you have
Janet's
it.
raising her
Janet, but
hand.
Janet's not Janet, is raising his hand. Oh, there's
Hi,
Janet.
go for it. Yeah, ask away.
We're curious concerning either the special fundraising projects or ongoing, do you have different levels of recognition for the big givers necessarily, or do you stay away from that, or do you total or tally as the years go by that people hit different levels? Is everybody do a little different or stay away from that, or what's statewide usually? What helps bring the big dollar givers in?
Any of our peer mentors, go for it.
I guess here on our, especially our building projects, we do we list you know, from 1,000 on, you know, each $10,000 to $20,000 there'd be different groups. On our ag building, there's probably 6 or 7 different categories that we recognized the difference whether you gave 1,000, 25,000 or 50,000. So yes, we recognize the different levels.
Other people?
Okay, we have just if somebody wants that recognition, we give them that opportunity, and we certainly do. We have not had that happen yet in Shickley, but when we have a big project, we always make 3 or 4 nice portraits of the entire donor list, alphabetized, with no numbers or no even dollar range. And we make the donors aware of that when we ask them for money, that their name will be on a plaque around town.
I would just add one thing, and that is that sometimes when I'm working with donors who've made a generous large gift, I simply ask them how they would like it to be recognized within reason, but that's nice too, just to ask them. All right, we had another question, which was, how do you delegate the work among FAC members? Great question. Anybody got an answer?
I think a lot of our funds have created committees to help kind of allow people to self-select where they want to put their time and efforts. But is there any mentors out there that would like to share their thoughts?
This is Sal, and I would say in Brown County, you have a couple different, there are like your treasurer and secretary have very specific and important jobs. And especially when it comes to technology, keeping up, like information on the webpage at NCF, doing communications, things like that. Usually we look in recruiting new members, we look for people who can replace, when we have those current folks going out. And so it's kind of driven by the workload and, well, the selection of new committee members is often driven by the talent they have to replace on the current committee. I would say is our main strategy.
Well, my comment and something I've learned over time is don't confuse saying thank you with recognition. Most people want a sincere thank you and kind of an update on how their gift's being used and the difference it makes. That tends to be more important than recognizing them for the size of gift they made. But again, everybody's different. And as Emily said, it's always good to ask people how they like to be recognized or appreciated. So you've got some insights. I'm complete.
Thank you, Jim. And then Doug had one question. This one might be for Jana. Do any FACs use Gallup Strengths Finder when recruiting?
Not to my knowledge, but Denise and I would love to have someone be interested in using the Gallup Strength Finders to recruit and learn more about that, since we're working on becoming coaches for that. So it's a great tool, and I think it would be a fun thing to dive into in several of our fund advisory committees across the state.
And I want to give Dina's session a plug. Thursday afternoon, there'll be a session on loving yourself and loving your community. And we will be highlighting the superpowers exercise, which is helpful in identifying what superpowers, what strengths you need for your FAC to do well. So shout out to that session on Thursday afternoon. All right, Jana, do you want to close our session with some final thoughts?
Thank you, Emily. So hopefully today we've maybe dispelled some mysteries that you've had looming about being an FAC member, or some questions that you've had in the back of your mind. Hopefully we've answered them or shed some light. If not, please feel free to add more questions to the chat, or send an email to your coordinator, or even reach out to one of the mentors that you've heard today. Dina, you want to put up the slide? So you've heard from 6 mentors across the state on these 6 roles, and many of our FAC members are probably serving as one or all of them a lot of times in their FACs and within their funds. And certainly you're the one who can figure out which best role you want to take on as an FAC member. But just remember that the Nebraska Community Foundation has a huge network out there. Mentors are always willing to talk and share information, as well as coordinators and the entire NCF staff.